You seek what all soldiers do.
And what's that?
An honorable death. An end to your pain.
Who says I'm in pain?
A man who has nightmares. Every night of his life is in pain.
The samurai or Japanese story in the comics really stands out from the other X-Men or other Wolverine comics. It's one of the most popular story arcs. It was something that attracted my attention 12 years ago when I was doing X-Men 1. And I'm really excited that the film has that point of difference that I think the comics had. We walk into this world through Logan's eyes that is so vastly different from anything we've had in any of the X-Men.
You need this tied like a proper samurai.
Visually, it's different. In tone, it's different. The characters and the storyline is enigmatic. You're not exactly sure who anybody is, whether they're on your side or not. And the goal is to give the best character study of this iconic superhero that has been done.
What kind of monster are you? The Wolverine.
That Wolverine is a story based on a story that is so compelling and rich, and we have talked about this as being one that we had to find a way to tell.
The source material for the Wolverine was a comic by the same name by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. When I say by both of them, Chris Claremont wrote the story, Frank Miller did the art, and it was very much the inspiration for this film.
Frank and I were driving back from San Diego Comic-Con. I was giving him a lift up to Los Angeles, and we were stuck in a huge traffic jam. I was pitching him Wolverine. Frank actually had no desire to do Wolverine because in his mind, Wolverine was just this thug. Guy with claws ran around slashing people up. My pitch was, it's not that he's a thug, it's that there are these two conflicting aspects of his personality. There is the passionate animal, and there is the samurai trying to assert control over that animal. We went back and forth, and the more we talked, the more he evolved. So we took him from a cliche beginning and began layering on these textures and these elements of character that made him more and more three-dimensional and hopefully interesting.
The Black Clan has protected the House of Yasuda for 700 years.
Is that all the men you brought?
I always liked the Japan story. I thought that Chris Claremont and Frank Miller did an amazing job writing and telling it. It's one of the more interesting stories. It shows a whole new side of the character you really haven't seen before. Certainly helped cement that story as one of the pivotal moments in Wolverine's life. It was the first time the character started to branch out on his own, where there was simply a Wolverine story without the ancillary X-Men all around him.
Ready, 3, 2, 1, action! When you come on board a film like this, and it's a franchise that's existed and a brand that's existed, it can be really daunting. And really would have turned me off had it not been for the fact that this film in and of itself takes place in such a unique place, such a unique setting, that it becomes its own standalone film, where we have a chance to redefine who Wolverine is a little bit.
The best adaptations that I've been associated with and that I feel have been the most successful, the ones that are not so much literal as they are adhering to the essence of the material and following the intention of the material.
One of the aspects that's most interesting to me about him is his immortality, is the fact that with his healing factor, he can go on and does go on forever. And like gods, experiences the loneliness of a god, the fact that you have to lose those you love and you keep going on.
The losses you have had to suffer. A man can run out of things to live for.
Whether it's to the casualties of your enemies that you lose them, or even just to old age, you keep going on. He's been going on through wars and through century. So the opportunity of finding a character at this point of their weariness, it reminded me of a piece of literature I love, Isaac Asimov's The Bicentennial Man, which is about a robot, essentially, that lives forever, but suffers from the same issue. What happens when you fall in love and you live beyond this person, not just by 10 years, not by 20 years, but for eternity?
This isn't gonna end well.
What happens when everything you love keeps fading away and you must keep going? And in Wolverine's case as well, what happens when the cruelty of the world never seems to relent? At a certain point, you start to wonder, do I make any difference? And I thought it's a really interesting place to find Hugh's character, is at a place of almost complete desolation and depression.
You're not a hunter, are you?
Not anymore.
Jim was very, very instrumental in the writing process. Some directors aren't that interested in developing story and really leave it to the screenwriter or screenwriters to come to them with a bunch of stuff, and they'll sort of pick and choose what they like and don't. Jim loves storytelling. He is himself a screenwriter as well, so it's having a collaborator as a writer as well as a director.
There's nothing like having a writer-director, because that's the ultimate synthesis of what's on the page and what then gets translated onto film.
What you try and do when you adapt something for film, generally, is you try and figure out, A, how is it going to speak simply and clearly to the audience? You can never do as many ideas, or sometimes in a novel or a sprawling saga, but how can I connect and boil this really down? And to me, what was so clear about this, and what I tend to try and do, is come up with a central idea that I'm going to follow. And that central idea is going to guide me like a North Star. For me, that idea was this idea of loss for Logan, that everyone he loves will die. Like in Outlaw Josie Wales or another kind of great Western vengeance story, he sets off on this journey, and part of it is about reclaiming something he's lost in himself. Part of it is about finding a love that he's lost. And the obstacles he comes up against, he's kind of an unstoppable force. In Japan, samurai films and Westerns have a great deal in common. Josie Wales is an example. That movie opens with his wife and family getting killed, and he's suddenly a Ronin, completely alone.
She died. I killed her.
When we first spoke, he said two things to me. One is the outlaw Josie Wales, which was a great kind of idea and template for this movie. And the second thing he said to me was, everything Wolverine loves dies, which is very powerful. And that idea that you're on your own, really desperate to connect on some elemental level, but terrified of doing it. Because every time you do that, something bad happens.
What always I try and remain true to in this story is this idea that Logan is fighting a pretty serious battle with himself, and that all these different elements within Japan are also ways for us to come to understand what he's battling inside.
The Wolverine is a lot darker than other X-Men films, and that's intentional, obviously. We felt that he had earned a darker story. To use a Japanese metaphor, he's a Ronin.
Your grandfather called me a Ronin. Samurai without a master. He said I was destined to live forever. He had no reason to live.